Good morning, everyone. I'm delighted to welcome you all to our webinar on reducing food waste in large venues. My name is Hibartel. I'll be your host for today's session. I am the Education and Outreach Specialist with the Santa Clara County Food Recovery Program. The program is charged with countywide implementation of SB 1383 food recovery requirements on behalf of all the cities in Santa Clara County. We are responsible for identifying and providing education and outreach to regulated entities, collecting reporting, monitoring compliance, including conducting inspection. I would also like to introduce Kira Lowe, the program manager of the Santa Clara County Food Recovery Program. She'll be managing things at the back end, and then I was also answering some of your questions, and hopefully she'll join us at the end of the webinar. So today we'll be diving into how to recover surplus food in compliance with the new SB 1383 edible food recovery regulation, as well as how to reduce the amount of surplus food created in the first place. We know that large venue category covers many different business types, including some businesses managing tenants, for example, airports and malls, and others not. We will address the different implications for compliance and food recovery and provide examples for each business type. So thank you for joining us, and let's begin. A couple of housekeeping tools or notes. Please don't hesitate to ask questions you may have. We will answer questions at the end of this session. We have compiled case studies and other resources, and we will share best practice around food waste prevention. That said, we would love to hear from you and your experience as well. Please chime in with your own strategy for food waste prevention and recovery in the chat. Also, finally, a survey will pop up when you leave this webinar. Please take a minute to fill out the short survey. We would love to get your feedback. During this webinar, we will start by providing information about the new law and how it applies to large venues in Santa Clara County, as well as how to go about setting up a food recovery program or donation program in compliance with SB 1383. We'll then share some strategies and tips to reduce the amount of surplus food generated by your operation or your food tenants. We have three great speakers from San Francisco Airport, Federal Realty, who manages Santana Row, and also Levy restaurants that provide food service for the Levi Stadium, who will share their experience and insight into their own food recovery program and strategies that they have successfully employed to reduce their surplus. Putting things in some context, I'm sure you've heard the statistics that 30 to 40% of the food supply in the US goes to waste. This amounts to around 219 pounds of waste per person per year. In California alone, the food service industry generates just under 1.5 million tons of surplus food in 2022. The graph here gives you a breakdown of that surplus food by category, the vast majority being prepared food. In addition to having some of the highest embedded greenhouse gas emission, prepared food are highly desired items for local distribution to food insecure community members. To address this issue of food waste and greenhouse gas emission, the California legislators passed SB 1383, California's short-lived climate pollutant reduction strategy. That's a mouthful. So a brief overview of SB 1383. This bill, signed into law in 2016, aims to reduce the statewide greenhouse gas emission, primarily methane, by reducing the amount of organic waste that ends up in California landfill. And it sets the following goals: reducing organic material in landfill by 50% in 2020 and by 75% in 2025. The third goal of recovering 20% currently disposed edible food for human consumption by 2025. This is the aspect of the law that is the focus of the Santa Clara County Food Recovery Program. So what does this mean for large venues? SB 1383 creates requirement for a number of different businesses and institution types, including large venues. Under the law, large venues are defined as permanent venue facilities that seat or serve an average of 2,000 plus people per day of operation. SB 1383 and local ordinances require large venues in Santa Clara County to submit a recovery report annually, starting in 2025. And these reports cover the previous calendar year. So your first report will cover your activity in 2025, and that the first report will cover your activity for 2024. Also, it requires to donate surplus food that would otherwise be wasted to a food recovery organization, or keep records on site, or require all food facilities within the venue to do so. If you are considered a large venue and are located in Santa Clara County, you should have received communication from us, the Food Recovery Program, regarding your responsibility under the law. And as of the requirements, we'll come back to this in the next couple of slides. SB 1383 and local ordinances require the following documents to be kept on site for each food recovery organization that you're working with. And those mainly are a copy of the contract or written agreement, organization name, address, and contact, the type of food that will be donated. This can be a list from the food recovery organization of the foods that they accept, or the food that you both have agreed upon to donate, as well as the frequency or the schedule of donation. This might be twice a week or as needed. These records can be physical copies or kept digitally, as long as they can be accessed on site and will be reviewed during inspection. Similarly, you should be prepared during an inspection and in reporting to explain any food waste prevention measures that you are using to reduce the amount of surplus food you have. These might include selling food at a discount or giving surplus food to staff. For venues with tenant, we recommend collecting information from your tenants to ensure that they are recovering the maximum amount in compliance with the law. This could be a simple survey that asks about their prevention measures or any other information that you are not already collecting related to their food recovery activities. As I mentioned earlier, the first report is due in 2025, but covers this year from January to December. So make sure you are keeping records now and are ready to report next year. We will send reporting reminders and links via email. We do send a mailer as well, but if you are only receiving the mailer and not the emails, please reach out to us to provide us a valid email address, and we will put that in the chat. Some additional information for large venues that have tenants and vendors and concessionaires. The law states that a large venue or a large event operator that does not provide food service but allows for food to be provided shall require food facilities operating at the large venue or a large event to comply with the requirement of this section. This includes all food facilities as well as food from any event held at the venue. It is important to note that large venues is still the regulated entity in this case, not the individual food facilities, meaning the venue is required to report and inspections will be coordinated with the venue, not the individual tenants. An exception to this is restaurants who have over 250 seats or larger than 5,000 square feet. Restaurants that meet this criteria are also regulated under the law and are required to comply. The venue and the regulated restaurants may choose to coordinate food recovery and record keeping or do so separately. The Food Recovery Program will send information about the law, including reminders to report resource and compliance information to the venue and individually to the individually related restaurants. But we will not communicate with the food facilities within the mall. We have provided some sample language via email for you to communicate with the new requirements. with your tenants. If you have any questions about the resources we provided or need further information, please don't hesitate to contact us. Again, we will put that email in the chat. I think Kira has already done that. There are a few different ways or to manage your food recovery for venues with the food vendors or tenants. So there's a centralized way and a decentralized way. So the centralized way of managing your food recovery for venues with food vendor or tenants is where it's a centralized option where the venue coordinates food recovery and keeps record. This can be an easier way to ensure compliance, that you have the required records on site. This is the model that the San Francisco Airport is using, and we will hear from them a little later about how that works. You may choose to also aggregate the food in this model, though it is not required. The second model is the decentralized model, where individual tenants manage their own recovery and keep their own records. In this scenario, we still recommend the large venues identify a food recovery organization that has the capacity to work with all or many of your tenants. And we're saying this because most of the food recovery organizations won't pick up food from one or two single small vendors. So vendors might find it difficult or even impossible to find a food recovery organization to do this work alone. Federal Realty with the Santana Row had a success implementing this model, and they have been gracious enough to share this process in getting that set up on the webinar today. So allow me to introduce Runa Brakaj, who will explain how Federal Realty has gone about establishing a food recovery programs for tenants in Santana Row.
Hi everyone, this is Runa Brakaj. I'm video recording from Santana Row today and super excited to speak about this topic. I know Kira and Heba asked me to be here today. And I just wanted to share some background on basically SB 1383, the new law requirements and how that affects us as landlords. Also some tips on what we've done here at Santana Row. So I manage all the operations for Santana Row, including the retail, and obviously, you know, here we also have office and residential, but this piece here focuses on our retail and specifically our food merchants. Here we have about 36 food merchants, 30 more traditional restaurants, and probably 6 or so food merchants that are somewhere in between, a little bit less traditional. This is your Starbucks, Pete's Coffee. We have Sugar Fina. We have Vintage Wine Bar, not full service restaurants, but still food merchants. We have Coca-Cola, a bakery and a coffee shop. So I'm going to talk about all those things and how we've enacted SB 1383 and some tips on what has helped us be successful here. So the first thing first is the food recovery partner was a new concept to me. And, you know, the Hunger or the joint venture team actually gave us some recommendations on how to find a food recovery partner. And we vetted about 10 of them. Through this process, we actually found that some were not able to take on the entire scope of our site. And then we had one really promising organization that came forward and was eager to help us, was eager to partner with our tenants. And most importantly for me, could take on the county recording piece of it and could really make pickup convenient for the tenants. I suspected that this would be entirely new for our tenants as well. And finding the right food recovery partner that could help streamline the process and really just connect directly with our tenants and take on the reporting was key. So through the vetting process, we were able to find one organization called Hunger at Home, which was, you know, they've been extremely helpful. I actually helped work out the contract details with them before we shared their contact information with our tenants. So that I was sure that they could properly help our tenants. Again, suspecting our tenants would really need a lot of assistance and to take the heavy lift off of them as much as possible. So the first thing we did is kind of establish that this food recovery partner, Hunger at Home, could come on site. They were up for the task. They could conveniently pick up the food, explain to the tenants how it needed to be packaged, stored, all those details. and also provide the recording piece of it. So once we had all of that, we kind of sent out a newsletter to our tenants, and really just sharing that obviously this is a new law. It's actually a continuation of an old law, SB 1383, but with a new requirement, but also outlining a lot of the positives to the tenants. So the tax write-offs for them, obviously the community goodwill, you know, the goal of eliminating waste and some of their costs that they pay directly for waste. Here, probably similar to yours, it's sort of shared CAN billing in our waste area. So they'll see the benefit indirectly. But all those good highlights that we also shared. And then we had the contact information. So really what we just asked for is everything was there in our initial outreach, and we just gave the tenants a deadline to respond. From there, we kind of kept following up weekly, and then individually with tenants who needed, you know, further follow-up, we didn't hear back from, et cetera. Some tenants, what we came across is actually we were pleasantly surprised. I thought tenants probably had never heard about this, but I was surprised to hear that a handful of our tenants, probably 5 or 6, already had food recovery partners. Some had been working with them, you know, for a year or close to that time range, and others had more of a corporate initiative, like some of our larger chains had their own ESG goals, so they already had a food recovery partner. We allowed the tenants to utilize any food recovery partner that they chose. However, we kept kind of pushing Hunger at Home because we knew if they didn't have one, that this vendor, this partner, food recovery partner, could take on the task. From there, really, a couple challenges that we had was, you know, not as many as we suspected, I should say. But a few of our tenants, especially the non-traditional restaurants, they are somewhere in between. They don't have the same sort of waste and excess inventory that our larger restaurants do. And we've had to kind of come up with an intermediary solution with them. But again, Hunger at Home was able to do that. So instead of picking up every week, they might pick up more as needed. And this is more kind of the specialty food merchants. That's really all some tips I want to share today. I want to keep it short because I know how busy you all must be. Kira and Hiba can share my information if you'd like to get in touch with me. I'm happy to share more details. The last thing that I want to add is, from a landlord perspective, this is pretty positive because I know we all have our company ESG goals, but in addition to that, it's something kind of easy that we can do in connecting our food merchants with a food recovery partner, showing goodwill to the community, but also, you know, kind of being a positive thing for us as landlords as well. So that's really it today, and thank you so much. If you have questions, I look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you so much, Runa, for sharing your system as well as your strategies with us. I hope this was helpful for some of the participants or attendees today. So now, how about how to go about setting up a food recovery program? You have just heard one example where you'll hear 2 more from our upcoming speakers. But first, we wanted to briefly highlight a few best practices that may be relevant to your operation and your vendors. The first step to set up a recovery program is finding an organization that will collect the type and the amount of food you have to donate. This is particularly important for large venues, as Runa mentioned, whether you have many tenants or a lot of surplus food prepared after an event. Not all organizations will be able to take this food. You can use our matching tool, which I'll go over in a moment, to find a list of organizations that you may be able to work with on your site. A few other best practices for food donation is, one is package your donation in a sanitary containers. Work with your food recovery partners to choose the size and the method that works best for you. We recommend reusable containers where possible. All donations should be labeled with the type of food and the date that the food was prepared or stored. designate space in your freezer or your refrigerator for donations. Ideally, you should label this space to avoid mixing up the donation with other food, and make sure your staff is well trained on this system. Using donation records to reduce surplus. This goes back to everything we mentioned, and our speakers will be talking about this as our speaker spoke about this earlier. Donation records are a great way to see what items you have regularly have leftovers of. And then, of course, engage your team. Food recovery can be great for staff morale, as no one likes to see food thrown away, and everyone can feel the good of helping the community. If you have a member who is especially passionate, and designate that person or that individual as your food recovery champion. Food recovery works best when everyone is aware, engaged, and involved. As I mentioned earlier, we do have a matching tool on our website. So this is our website, and it's in the chat, I believe, as well now. You can go on our website and scroll down to step 3, which is connect. And this will connect you with the food recovery organization that we have on our website. And these organizations are operating in our county and are currently looking for food donation partnership. You can see that in this tool, you can filter by categories that most applies for your business. In this particular example, the filter is, we filtered by accepted food, and we selected prepared food. And then you can go on the list and get down the list, you get a particular examples of the organizations that are accepting prepared food. You may also filter by any other option. In this option, they have selected, I believe, by the type of business. Feel free to select the business, the organization that works best for you. In your case, it will be the large venue. And then you'll get a subset of the organizations that are available. At this point, you can just click on the organization and you'll get their contact information as well as how to reach them. So feel free to use that tool. Again, we'll put that link in the chat so you can explore and see what works best for you. Now we would like to discuss a little bit food safety and liability protection. Of course, food facilities must always comply with CAL code, whether food is being sold or donated. If food is not safe or appealing enough for you to want to eat it, it should not be donated. A quick note for those of you who have food trucks on your site, CAL code limits the item that can be donated from these food vendors. You can find more information in the one sheet that was shared earlier. When it comes to liability, a federal and state regulation protects donors from civil and criminal liability, except in the case of gross negligence and intentional misconduct. Legislation passed last year extends liability protections to donations made directly to needy individuals rather than just nonprofits. Keep in mind that date labels on food most often are quality and not safety labels, and many items can be donated on or even after the use by or sell by date. You should ask your food recovery organization for these specific policies regarding date label. When it comes to vendor credit and backhauling, another best practice is to offer to donate these items. So I'm happy to introduce our second speaker today. Briana will tell us about the centralized food recovery program that they are using at the San Francisco airport. Here's Briana.
Hi, everybody. My name is Briana Zhen. I'm with the environmental team here at San Francisco International Airport, and I'm thrilled to share more on SFO Unites Against Hunger, which is SFO's food recovery program, where we capture all the surplus food from our business concessionaires across the terminals, and we donate it to various nonprofits throughout the Bay Area. And for this food recovery program to work at SFO, we've partnered with a Bay Area-based nonprofit Replate. And what Replate does, their whole business operations, is that they will capture surplus food from any organization, whether that be from Whole Foods grocery stores to stadiums to large venues like SFO. They will come on site, capture the surplus food, and physically haul it off-site to various nonprofits in the local area. And this here is a photo of one of Replate's food rescuers. His name is Matt, and he is in one of SFO's food donation rooms. And here's a more intimate look at what we call our food donation hubs. And these are centralized communal drop-off rooms for surplus food. So the way that our food recovery program works here at SFO is that any of the business concessionaires in any of the terminals have communal access to these centralized drop-off rooms. And they're essentially large closets that have a commercial sized fridge in there and crates for storing the food. So for example, if you are Pete's Coffee, you would bring your prepackaged sandwiches, your extra coffee beans, and you would walk to the centralized room, and then you would put your food in the crate and then write a little post-it saying, "I'm Pete's Coffee from Terminal 1," and then you would put it in the fridge. And then Replate would come and weigh the incoming donation from Pete's. And this little blue square here on the stainless steel table is our scale. So we have scales in every single room, and Replate will weigh the incoming donation, log it onto their software, and haul it off site. So we have 3 of these centralized drop-off rooms right now, but I anticipate to have a total of 5 of these centralized drop-off rooms by summer's end. So ideally, I want at least one drop-off room in every single wing of each terminal. And for SFO Unites Against Hunger, we accept a variety of different kinds of food. So our most common donation would be the pre-packaged grab-and-go food. So these are usually from our retail concessionaires, where they have the huge shelves of various snacks, various pre-packaged sandwiches, salads, burritos, wraps that you can just grab and go. And then we also accept other things, just like snacks, granola bars, breakfast sandwiches. And this image in the middle was actually overstock that was purchased from one of our food establishments here. And these tomato chips they had purchased, but it wasn't selling. So they decided to pull it off the shelves and then donate it to this program. And then we also accept beverages too. And then from our airline lounge concessionaires, we also have them donating buffet style trays of food. And then having that fridge is really helpful for that, as it maintains the food safety aspect of those buffet trays and platters. And we currently have 39 businesses signed up out of 108 food vendors at SFO, and this is roughly a 36% enrollment rate. And as of the past almost 2 years, the business tenants that are participating collectively donated 26,000 pounds of food, and that equates to all of these environmental impact metrics shown here. And at SFO, we're really proud to say that we've donated an equivalent of 22,000 meals to help support our communities that are facing food insecurity. And of course, food is very energy intensive, water intensive, all the labor that goes into the manufacturing, production, distribution, packaging, and sale of food. When we've donated, we've been able to recover all of that from landfill or compost disposal. And yeah, and I think a common question that I'll get is how was SFO able to communicate this program to its many business tenants? So we would host quarterly meetings held by SFO Revenue Development and Aviation Management. So these are the two groups at SFO that are responsible for leasing out the square footage at the airport to concessionaires and thereby generating revenue. And these groups would host quarterly meetings, and I would go to those quarterly meetings and present to all the concessionaires during those meetings. And it was really nice having that captive audience already, because our property managers all have really great relationships with our business owners and business managers here. So I've been able to pitch SFO Unites Against Hunger to all the concessionaires in one succinct way through these quarterly meetings. And another thing that I recommend for communication is really having those face-to-face interactions. So when I initially was onboarding our business concessionaires to the food recovery program, I would actually go door to door to all the concessionaires that were in a nearby vicinity to the closest drop-off room. So I would go to them and then explain the program to them and offer an in-person tour and introduction to the food donation hubs. And then I also developed a one-page fact sheet and a two-page FAQ with short and straightforward answers that address common questions from vendors. And then another thing to make a robust food recovery program is to ensure that the convenience aspect is there. So as I was mentioning, all the business tenants have to do is bring the surplus food to their centralized drop-off room. And then they have a little post-it or a little note where they can indicate who they are and when the food is expiring. So that's the second thing that they have to do. And the third thing that they have to do is that they have to fill out Replate's online pickup form for each donation. So this form is this on the my right-hand side here. And it's essentially takes no longer than a minute and a half to fill out, where you just type in your name, Pete's Coffee, the pickup, today's date, and then you can write, oh, I have 5 chicken sandwiches and 4 croissants to donate in the description. And that's all the business tenants have to do. And then what SFO is responsible for is really facilitating the centralized program. So a question that I received when I was working on this program was, oh, can the concessionaires just manage their own donations and charities and just bring their own donation partner on site? And due to security reasons and SFO not wanting a bunch of different folks from different organizations coming in on campus every single day, it just made a lot more sense for SFO to facilitate an organization-wide program for all the business concessionaires to participate in. And then also the program up until this month was generously funded by grant funding from the San Francisco Department of the Environment. And also SFO is responsible for maintaining records for California Senate Bill 1383 compliance. So these records require the airport as the tier 2 large venue food generator to maintain records of frequency of donation, who donated, what they donated, and where the food was dropped off to. So with partnering with Replate, we've been able to seamlessly track this, because Replate's software that accompanies the physical drop-offs and delivery of the surplus food has been really instrumental and helpful in terms of tracking this. And that record keeping aspect is also why I ask any of the participating businesses to fill out this online form. It's so we can view who filled out the pickups online, and then we can later on match it to what was physically dropped off and the weights of those physical drop-offs. And then also the food recovery service providers. So that's folks like Replate, although there are many other organizations that offer a similar service. So they are responsible for weighing incoming donations and then also delivering that surplus food to nearby charities. And here's just a closer image of what the drop-off looks like, and then what that little post-it note that I was referencing looks like. So it's small, it's simple. They just fill out the name, the date of the drop-off, and then also when the food expires. And then they just put it along with their donations, and it helps us identify who donated what. And in terms of next steps for SFO expansion, as I had mentioned earlier, we have about 36% business enrollment, and I'm hoping to increase that to 100% by July of 2025. That's a reasonable goal for SFO, and the way that I plan to do that is to further partner with our property managers here, because they are on the front line of building those relationships with our business concessionaires. And the concessionaires really trust and lean into their property managers for anything. So being able to go through that channel has been really helpful. And another thing that I found helpful was targeting the parent companies and finding a director at the corporate level who's invested in this. So for example, some of our concessions are actually owned and operated by the same parent company. So I've been able to identify what those parent companies are and find a key stakeholder at that corporate level. And once I'm able to convince them and get them onboarded into the program, they will get all of their 9 stores underneath their wing to also participate and join in. And then at SFO, we also have a green business program here, which helps certify businesses operating here through different credit categories of energy efficiency, water conservation, zero waste, toxics reduction. And one of the things that is required to get green business certified is to also participate in food recovery. So for folks that are undergoing certification, they have to participate in the food recovery program. And also, once that food donation piece and that food recovery piece is in line with SB 1383 compliance, the next tier of what SFO is going to focus on is going to be wasted food prevention. So we plan to conduct annual audits of all the food recovery efforts, and we can do that by evaluating compost bins, surveying the managers about procurement and what is being thrown away. And through those learnings and the benchmarking, we will then work with our concessionaires to optimize inventory management and procurement practices. And another creative way to prevent wasted food is using surplus food and ingredients creatively. So there's a couple of nonprofits in the Bay Area. I know of one being Greener by Default and Actera, where they offer consulting services to help chefs kind of use what would have normally been discarded in creative ways to kind of reinvent menu items and then use conventional scraps and get that repurposed either into stock or into, you know, a different variation of the food item. And hopefully all of this coupled together will help us reduce the amount of food that's thrown away and then also recover the maximum amount of surplus food. And yeah, that is all I have for today. And if you have any other questions on SFO's food recovery program, feel free to reach out to me. And here's my line. I can do call or text, or you can email me.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Briana, for sharing this setup and for your recovery setup, as well as a great segue for us to talk about prevention. Today, throughout this webinar, we have talked a lot about food recovery and donation, but now we wanted to focus on some strategies to prevent and reduce the amount of surplus food created in your operation and those of your tenants. This is because while donating food is a great way to handle surplus food, and that would be otherwise be wasted, even better is reducing or preventing that surplus from being generated in the first place, right? So this is the Environmental Protection Agency most preferred pathway, prevention. As you can see here, while donation being the second, composting third, and lastly is landfilling food waste. Reducing surplus food production or eliminating it altogether is the best way to minimize environmental impact of food operation. This approach also makes sense to most businesses. This approach also makes sense, the most business sense, with the potential to cost-saving strategies, including reducing the cost of waste hauling as well as the cost of food. So here are a couple of prevention strategies to consider implementing in your operation or sharing with your tenants. So tracking waste surplus to adjust accordingly. Tracking waste provides you with some information so you know where you're measuring your waste and therefore you're managing that surplus. Also managing inventory to reduce the waste, whether implementing a system to monitor shelf life of product you have in storage. Keep track of inventory, first in, first out, rotating your stock regularly to avoid and prevent spoilage, as well as buying locally and seasonally and set up the menus accordingly. And you'll hear this from our next speaker. Selling your surplus food at a discount, sharing surplus food with your staff. This builds great morale within your operation and within your facility. And then share your effort with your customer. Customers care about your efforts in your business, and sharing that also amplifies your effort. There are so many. So yeah, we're still here. Thank you, Kira. There are, of course, many more. We hosted a webinar specifically for restaurants that goes into much more details on food waste prevention strategies in commercial kitchens. We will send a link to the recording via email. Feel free to check it out and send it to restaurant tenants or other food facilities that you manage. For those of you that have large events, we know that food waste prevention is difficult. We often see a lot of waste after a large venue because you don't want to run out of food and it's impossible to predict how much will be needed. Our next speaker, who manages food service operations for Levi Stadium, will provide some tips to help prevent surplus food as much as possible at events. We also have developed a one sheet for large venues that highlights prevention and food recovery tips that may be helpful. And we'll also put that in the chat. So food waste prevention, we have some additional food waste prevention resources and tools that can help your business to reduce their surplus food. We know some of the tenants at Santana Row are using Too Good To Go to sell their surplus food at a discount. And some larger food service operations are using LeanPath to track their food waste and surplus food. Also, again, visit our website to see more tools that might benefit your operation. So now I would like to introduce our third case study. Alvin is a senior executive chef at the Levy's restaurants at Levi Stadium. And also Alvin is going to be sharing some prevention tips as well as their donation program setup. So here's Alvin.
Hello, everybody. My name is Chef Alvin Kabiling. I'm the senior executive chef for Levy restaurants here at Levi Stadium, home of the 49ers. A little background about myself. I've been working for Levy restaurants for almost 10 years now. Specifically at the stadium, I've been here since 2019. With a background working at Oracle Arena for Golden State Warriors played. So I know high volume, high profile counts. Here at the stadium, we feed on average about 68,000 people, not including all the workers in the building, for a game. That's 3 hours before kickoff and an hour after in the clubs. It's a lot of food. And of those 68,000 people here at the stadium, 45 to 50, I would say, are members who have an all-you-can-eat or member-inclusive menu in concessions, and about 1,500 to 2,000 have access to our inclusive clubs, where they get a vast amount of variety of foods, available. There's all-you-can-eat buffets in the clubs. In the concession stands, there's chicken tenders, hot dogs. We run the gamut. It's a lot of food to fire here at the stadium, and it takes a lot of people. So on my staff, just cooks alone, I have about 130 to 150 cooks. Those are in the stands, in concessions, in suites, and in the inclusive clubs. Hundreds of workers too, and we cook a lot of food. And you might ask, how do we feed 68,000 people? It's something that's not easy to do, but we've learned how to do it. The 5 years here, we have a lot of historical data of how much food people eat, when they eat, the trends, before the game starts and when halftime comes. So we know how much food to cook, when to cook it, and when to kind of slow down so we don't end up with a lot. And it took about 5 years to finally figure that out. So our practices here on food, we batch fire. We don't cook all the food at once before the game and hold it for a very long time. We have the ability to cook the food when we need it to be served and not hold it for a very long time. So it's batch firing. That's the biggest thing we do here. We batch fire. We can batch fire chicken tenders, hot dogs. We batch fire our roasted meats for carving stations in our inclusive clubs. And then you wonder after the game, what do we do with all that extra food? We don't just throw it away. There are things that we will have to discard, but for the most part, we save a lot, we keep a lot, we hold a lot. We're still in operation through the week, so a lot of that gets, family meal. I still have staff to feed, family meal. But the things that we won't be able to use, we donate a lot of food. We donate to Hunger at Homes, Martha's Kitchen. They come and pick the food up. So what we do after the game, immediately after the game, once the game ends and the clubs are closing, concessions are shutting down, all the food comes down to the kitchen. It gets triaged, but when it enters, save, or it's of not good enough quality, or it's been held too long, so that it gets diverted. We call it triage. And if it's going to be kept and saved, we have blast chillers to help cool the food properly down in a timely manner. So our blast chiller cools the food down within the perfect time. It gets wrapped up, labeled, put it away. And so that's the end of the night. Hot dogs, tenders, roasts, pastas, all this we can save. So that happens at the end of the night. I have another team that comes in the next morning to go through all this food, and then what we can use, we save. What we can't use, but it's still edible, of good quality, we'll set it aside to get donated and picked up. That usually happens 1 or 2 days after the event. It gives us the ability to triage, to sort through it. I usually give them a heads up on how much they can expect to be receiving, so they don't bring too much people, or if it's too much for them to collect, I'll go on to a next company to pick it up. A few other additional tips. We use the FIFO system, first in, first out. Anyone in the restaurant industry, food service industry knows what that is. So we buy thousands and thousands and thousands of hot dog buns. It's one of those items we don't know how many we're going to use, but we have to have enough on hand for 68,000 people. So what we do is we order hot dog buns. Whatever doesn't get used, it is dated and tagged, and the fresh ones go into the freezer. So come our next game, whatever we have in the freezer, will get taken out, and those will get used first. Okay, those will be put in our busiest stands that sell hot dogs. So we have this rotating system, first in, first out. Seasonality of menus. I come from restaurants, and I worked at a couple of restaurants where, we're seasonal. It's a seasonal restaurant. You use the freshest possible ingredients that are in season, and you menu them out. So, for example, strawberries. Strawberries are very good in the summertime. Watermelons are very good in the summertime. They're not so great come December. Another thing that we do here is we deconstruct a lot of items. Cheese boards, charcuteries, crudités. When you're feeding 400, 500, 600 people in a club, there's always going to be one or two items that will sell better than the others. So on my cheese boards, I send everything bulk. I have my team build those boards in location. So if it's 3 or 4 different cheeses, I don't put them all on one platter. I might put 2 on a platter and 2 on another platter, knowing the cheddar will go faster than blue cheese, because it does. So instead of changing out the entire board, and now that doesn't look good and that's waste, and I have to put a fresh one out. The blue cheese is still a lot on my deconstructed, so that stays. But my cheddar cheeses, I'll replenish, I'll keep replenishing as it goes. Another thing I want to add is with Levy restaurants, we rolled out last season. It's our Waste Not 2.0 program. So what this is, it's a waste tracker by weight of what we track of the food. We track trim, we track stuff like inedible parts, bones and all that. We track overproduction or burning food. And what this does, it shows my team, hey, trim that head of lettuce a lot more. There's more on that romaine than what you're actually throwing away. So what I do is, before anything goes into the trash, on the prep tables, I put big Lexans or deep hotel pans. And while they're cutting away and they're processing product, whatever does not go on the plate gets all put in a container in the middle of the table. And when that gets filled up, they go to a scale where I have set aside. They weigh out exactly what they are wasting. They enter it into our system, Waste Not 2.0. And it tracks only by weight, but it's categorized as, is it green weight, where it's trims that are inedible, bad product, or is it red waste, where it's overproduction, spoiled food, and things of that sort. So it's an eye-opener to my cooks, because now they're seeing what is actually going into the trash or in the trash can, or I can get more out of that head of lettuce than what I'm actually putting in the trash. So it's an eye-opener on 2 parts. My cooks are realizing that there's more to the food than what we should throw away, and there's a cost savings on that. What we also do with all the surplus food is we still feed our staff here in the building. I still have 50 cooks, and post-event, there's still 4 or 5 days of cleaning the building, and I have 30 stewards. So they all have to eat still. So there's always plenty of food after a game that doesn't just go into the trash can, gets diverted. Hello, everybody. My name is Chef Alvin Kabiling. I'm the
Thank you so much, Alvin. Great prevention tips. Thank you for elaborating more. I also love the idea of tracking that food and seeing what is being thrown away. And it's an like you said, it's an eye opener for everyone in the kitchen to see what's happening there. We really appreciate your time, as well as all the speakers' time and their graciousness to record and provide us with this information. Thank you all for joining us today, and have a great day, and bye-bye.